Yes, all right. Oh, well, yeah, we'll see. Yeah, because I might sneak up here without getting away. I think we're more or less there's two. Yeah, exactly. Two lowers. Now, the stream is run, and the people you'll see right in front of our other camera, so right on the back of my head. If they go to www.stephendavies.com.au, funeral notices, Rodney Seebeck, and underneath the funeral notice it says live stream on YouTube, and it's a link. Okay, and he's running YouTube.
This is being streamed. I just had a call from my brother in Brisbane. He's trying to get onto it, and it's not. He said it's directing him to go to YouTube, but it's showing funerals from days ago.
It'll be there now, and if you get him to refresh his screen, because it's only just started. Because normally we start about a quarter of an hour before the service begins, and you may just look tiny bit early. Okay. So it's definitely running. Just double check that everything. Thanks. they will think to resolve the issue for the allowed it is very, very. Thank you very much.
I've just got to make a quick phone call.
It's all right. My mum used to have But Thomas, the community
Hello, Morris. And Morris. Your fingers tapping and your toes tapping as well. I don't know what will. We don't just grieve the moment our loved one passes. We grieve the past, the future and now. Our loved ones are more than a moment in time. Good afternoon, my name is Kathy and I'm your celebrant today for the life celebration of Rodney Seebeck, a man who was loved by all of you in your own way and who played his own part in your lives in his own way. I'd like to thank you all for coming today and to thank those that have travelled. And I'd like to thank you for saying your farewells and for showing your love and support that has been given to Rod over the last years of his life here in Bairnsdale. I'd also like to thank those that are joining us via the live stream and sending their love today. There was a wonderful community of people that gave Rod their friendship and time over the years. And two of those are Susie and Brendan, who nurtured him with his favourite foods. And there are too many others to name individually, but you all know who you are. And so thank you on behalf of Rod's family. You may have noticed at the door there was envelopes to make a donation to the Alzheimer's Association as well. So feel free to make a donation in Rod and Helen's honour. Rod passed away suddenly on the 24th of September. When someone you love dies suddenly, you might feel cheated that you didn't get to say goodbye. But you can take comfort in knowing that Rod has once again been reunited with the love of his life, Helen. Rodney was a much-loved brother of Trevor and Kay and Jeffrey, who passed away in 2015. He was an admired brother-in-law of Libby, Sian and Greg, as well as a brother-in-law to the large dairy family who have been a wonderful help to Rod, especially Morris, who was a great mate as well as a brother-in-law. He was a loving uncle and great uncle of many nieces and nephews, and he was a relative and a friend to many. Today you'll get to hear about Rod's life through his eulogy that has been written and will be read by family members. There'll also be a chance to come and share a few of your own personal memories of Rod up here. You'll see a selection of photos that have been chosen to show you Rod's life as captured through the lens of a camera. Then at the conclusion of Rod's life celebration, you're all invited back to the Bairnsdale Bowls Club where you can continue to share your memories together. There's been a slight change of plan and Rod will be privately buried and will once again join Helen up at the Bairnsdale Cemetery later on. But I'll head back to the Bairnsdale Bowls Club following here. I'd now like to ask Sally to please come up, followed by Gus. Or Gus first, Sally. Tell us about Rod's life.
Thank you, Kathy. Hi everyone. Just on behalf of our family, I'd just like to say thank you to the many people that have travelled today to be with us. It seems a bit of a trait of the Seebeck family that we like to live as far away from each other as we possibly can, which is probably why we do get on pretty well when we come together. And also to the members of Helen's family as well, who have travelled and who are here in Bairnsdale and who've joined us. And in particular, we want to say thank you to Veronica and Kevin and Morris, and to echo Kathy's words, who provided such great support to Uncle Rodney, especially in the last few years of his life after Helen passed away. So I'm joined on stage, for those I haven't met, my dad Jeff was of course Rod's youngest brother, and along with my cousin Sam, we are Rod's godsons. And I'm joined on stage here by my second favourite cousin, Sally, who's going to help me, who's going to help us recall a lot of Rod's life. And I do want to say how nice it is to see our cousins together. We don't get together anywhere near often enough, and there are two who haven't been able to join us today, but I hope who are watching over the live stream, and that's to Sam and Eve. So we wish you guys were here, and of course also to our partners, husbands and wives and kids as well. But I'll now hand over to Sally, who'll talk us through Rod's early life, and then I'll pick up when things got interesting and he moved overseas. Thanks, Sally. Need a phone book or?
Well, I think I'm little after you guys. So these are Trevor's notes and memories of his older brother, some memories from early childhood. Rodney Lyle, the boss. Born August the 23rd, 1939 at Bethesda Hospital, which is now part of the Epworth Hospital. The first child of Lulu and Lou Seebeck. Rod's first home was 94 Woolton Avenue, Thornbury. He was baptised at Holy Trinity Church of England, Thornbury, where he also attended kindergarten. At 5 years of age, Rod became ill with meningitis, so he did not start school until he was 6. This could account for his determination to always be the best. He went to primary school at Hutton Street, Thornbury, and during this time he joined the 5th Northcote Cubs and later on became a Queen's Scout. Rod went on to do his secondary schooling at Northcote High, and during this time the family moved to 25 Davidson Street, Preston. Rod represented Northcote High in football, basketball, as well as cadets. Rod played cricket for St James in the Northcote and District Association, opening the batting and bowling for juniors and seniors. During high school, Rod decided he would like to be a sailor and sat the first set of midshipman exams. On passing, he then decided he would like to be a primary school teacher and not a sailor. Apparently teachers drove nice cars. Approximately around 1957, after matriculating, Rod studied teacher training at Toorak Teachers College. He played football for the college, played for Mentone, and joined Mentone Lifesaving Club, where many chicken swims were held off the Mentone Pier. And at this time, during the Christmas summer holidays, the family moved to the famous address, 1 the Corso, Parkdale. After graduating, Rod's first posting was to Wonthaggi Technical School because there was a shortage of teachers. He wasn't much older than his students. While in Wonthaggi, he played football for Inverloch Comwork, won their best and fairest, and joined the Cape Patterson Surf Lifesaving Club. Next, on to Bairnsdale, where he continued to teach, and there is where he met the love of his life, Helen. He joined the Bairnsdale Football Club and the Lakes Entrance Surf Club. Rod was a member of the victorious team that won the Victorian Surf Lifesaving Club Association Lightning Premiership, played at Little River. The secret weapon being Kevin Coverdale. His pre-match address was, "You boys play footy and I'll do the fighting." This was the only flag won Rod through his sporting life. Rod returned to Parkdale, played football for Chelsea and taught at Parktone Primary School. I can remember his second last game at Chelsea, playing Mornington in the first semi-final. Chelsea were down 6 goals at quarter time. As the coach moved in to give his address, Rod pushed him aside and gave the team the biggest blast of all time. They were in front at half time and went on to win the game. And Rod was BOG, best on ground. In 1965, that was Rod's last year before he went overseas and took up rugby. This, I think, shows the determined character he was. What I say is right.
Thanks, Sal. So I pick up the story in 1965 when Uncle Rodney took 1 year's leave of absence from his job and first headed off overseas to explore the big wide world. But before I get too far into the story, I must thank our cousin Susie for her diligent work when she was in year 10 at school and chose to write a school assignment on her big uncle Rodney Lyle, of which I've taken much inspiration for this part of his life. Rod's first travels were to Europe, where he landed a job as a crew member on a sailing ship that travelled the North Sea. Evidently, this pretty quickly cured him of all those thoughts of spending his life on the ocean. But it was clear that 1 year wasn't anywhere near long enough for Rodney to see him do everything he wanted to do. So after his leave was up, he resigned from the Victorian Education Department and stayed overseas teaching for another year. Soon the money ran out, but instead of returning to Australia penniless, he decided to apply for teaching posts all over the world that he had seen advertised in the Times Educational. Successful in his application, Rod was offered a 2-year contract with the British Council teaching English at Tripoli College in Libya in North Africa, which I can't imagine what that was like back in those years, being as far away as it was, with our dad away as well. Poor old Nana must have had many a sleepless night, I'm sure. Throughout these 2 years, Rodney continued to travel whenever he could and visited all 4 corners of Europe. And it was this stunning scenery of Rod's new world that kept conjuring images of Helen. As Susie so eloquently wrote in her project, Helen constantly invaded his mind and distracted his thoughts. To quote Rodney here, Helen and I used to sit underneath these amazing cliff faces just outside of Bairnsdale. The fjords in the Balkans reminded me of Bairnsdale. I'm sure that comparison's been made before or since, but such is Rodney. So I wrote to Helen where she was living in New Guinea and said, I've been thinking of you because of this beautiful scenery. And thus their relationship was rekindled. The correspondence started slowly, but soon there was a constant flow of letters from Europe and North Africa to New Guinea. At this stage, Helen was living in a Catholic mission where she was training to be a nun. But these plans were altered forever when Rod decided to leave Africa and join her. And I know cousin Clint's got a great story to share a little bit later about Rod's journey from Libya to New Guinea, which was an adventure in itself. Rod's living arrangements at the Catholic mission where Helen had lived for the past 2 years are worth a mention. The mission was very small, and it could not be known that Rod was living in the area because of his history with Helen. And they had to set an example to the other young women in the mission. So when he arrived, Rod had to board with a priest on the other side of the river. And whilst I can't confirm this part of the story, I'm pretty sure that Rod would have regularly risked life and limb dodging crocodiles and giant snakes in the river to sneak across to spend whatever time he could with Helen. About this time, Rod was offered a teaching post about 5 hours boat trip up the coast from the mission. He summarily rejected the offer, saying that he hadn't travelled all the way around the world to be with Helen, only to spend most of his time 5 hours up the river. Either that or perhaps the fishing was a bit better where she was living on that particular part of the river. Soon after, they decided that they would spend the rest of their lives together and chose to marry. They headed back to Bairnsdale and tied the knot here on the 27th of January 1970 at St Mary's Cathedral. After a short honeymoon, they returned to New Guinea, where Rod eventually secured a position at the Rabble School, where he was eventually become the principal. Rod's tenure at the school was so successful, the local government decided to build a commercial college in the town, where Rod would also work. Amazingly, when Rod and Helen first arrived in Rabble, all the tellers and the local bank staff were of European descent. When they left 5 years later, every female staff member at the local bank was a New Guinean girl who had been trained at the commercial college under Rod's leadership. And even more impressively, every junior typist in the entire town was an ex-student of Rod's at the girls' college. It was this transformation that Rodney successfully oversaw that so wonderfully illustrated his devotion to the local communities in which he and Helen lived, combined with his determination and skill as an educator. To quote Rodney again, it is the greatest feeling to be able to see the success of all your hard and caring work. After his tenure at Rabble, Rod was posted to Madang, where he became the headmaster at the Madang Technical College. This led to another senior posting in Jakarta in the mid-1980s, and it was here that I and so many of our family were fortunate enough to visit and spend some quality time with Rod and Helen on our own. For many of us, including me, it was our first trip overseas, and it felt like we were visiting a magical new world with the most wonderful hosts. We all have vivid memories of swimming in their big pool, visiting live volcanoes, getting spoilt by their many staff with wonderful food and rich cultural experiences. Of course, we know how much Rod and Helen longed for children of their own, and we know what wonderful parents they would have been. And we certainly got a true appreciation for this when we stayed in Jakarta, where we were spoiled rotten and got away with so much more than we certainly would have at home. Rod always reflected that the one thing he appreciated most about living overseas in developing countries was the deep sense of respect and tolerance he showed for different cultures. Probably didn't show it for his own family as much, but he certainly showed it for. And I suspect that we could all take a leaf out of Rod's book and try to show a similar level of tolerance with our own families, and especially our teenage children, as they continue to grow up through the family. Finally, after 25 years overseas and never having owned their own home, Rodney and Helen decided the time was right to move back to Australia. They bought a block in Innisfail with plans to build, but that didn't quite pan out because it was too far away from family. So instead they moved to Adelaide to further their teaching studies, then took work in Darwin before finally moving to Yandina on the Sunshine Coast, where they bought a block of land at the foot of the Nindiri Mountains and at long last built their first home together. After Yandina, they moved to Rainbow Beach, then on to Bundaberg, then to Macrae on the Mornington Peninsula, and finally back to Bairnsdale, where they lived out their final years together. So in reflecting on Rod's incredible life and talking to family and friends over the last week or so, it's abundantly clear that inside Uncle Rodney lived a truly adventurous spirit that longed to travel and experience everything the world had to offer. And like all great adventurers, Rodney felt that life's experiences meant so much more when they were shared, and especially when they were shared with those that you loved. Sorry for the Seebeck trait that we nearly made it through, but we don't quite. How lucky Rod was that Helen came into his life at such a young age and they shared a similar passion for travel and adventure. And most importantly, that they weren't prepared to let the tyranny of distance keep them apart. Theirs was an unconventional love. It defied tradition, but ultimately was unwavering throughout the life they built together. They were true soulmates in every sense. I'll always remember Big Uncle Rodney as being larger than life. His presence, and who often was referred to, as Sally mentioned, as the boss, well, I'm quite sure that our Nana would have had something to say about that when she was alive. And I'll especially remember his wonderful big laugh that he rarely held back when he was happy. He loved to chat and always wanted to hear everybody's news, which we pretty quickly realised we had to be careful about what we shared, because otherwise everyone in Bairnsdale would know what was going on pretty soon after. I must also mention that Rodney did have quite a big nose, and I'll never forget Mum telling him once when she stumbled across the fact, "Rodney, you know that your nose keeps growing throughout your entire life?" "Thanks for that, Sean," he said. "At least I know my glasses will never fall off." In closing, whilst I know so many on the Seebeck side were looking forward to spending more time with Rodney in his new home in Yamba, we all take great comfort in knowing that he and Auntie Helen are by each other's side once again, where they belong. And they continue their eternal love and adventures together.
You did so much, and I did actually get to see the writing that now. You're going to put up your hand, who's Susie, who did the assignment, and was it a D that you got for it or not? I've seen it, it was definitely an A+. Now, Sally's going to come back up, followed by Clint, and then Patrick's going to come up after that, share some personal memories.
This is a personal message from my brother Sam, who couldn't be with us today. Sam is the eldest Seebeck nephew of Rod's and Helen's. Uncle Rod was my godfather. As you all know, Rod didn't have any children. When we were together, however, he used to often introduce me as his son. This made me so proud to be considered in this way by such a well-travelled and knowledgeable gentleman. I have memories of when Uncle Rod and Auntie Helen would come to Darwin for a visit when they were living in Papua New Guinea. Rod would share his stories of working as a teacher in a local school and the differences the way people lived. While visiting, Rod would always make sure he could be present at any tennis, cricket or football match of mine, and he would always be on the sidelines cheering loudly, and sport was always a big passion of our family. My most recent and unfortunately last memory of Rod is that he made the journey from Bairnsdale to Darwin for mine and Kate's NT wedding. After the wedding, Rod decided he would spend a few months enjoying the dry season and once again became familiar with the sights of Darwin. Rod mentioned how much they had changed immensely since 1985 when he and Helen had once lived there. My wife Kate thoroughly enjoyed getting to know Rod during this time. Kate enjoyed Rod's tales of living and working all around the world and great experiences he and Helen lived along the way, including being in London when the Beatles were at their best. Her favourite memory of Rod will forever be how proud he was to greet her as Mrs. Seebeck each time we picked him up for an outing. Uncle Rod, you will be forever in my heart, my uncle, my godfather, my friend.
Good afternoon, I'm Clint Moore, Rod's nephew. The following memory is one of Rod's own memories that Rod recounted for this famous assignment that Susie wrote as a biography for a school assignment. Rod had been corresponding to Helen from where he was in Europe and Libya, and Rod travelled from that part of the world to where Helen was running a medical clinic at Ladava, Milne Bay, on the easternmost extremity of Papua New Guinea. These are Rod's own words about part of the journey he took to see Helen after they'd been apart for a few years. I went out to the Jackson's airport at Port Moresby. I'd seen these quite huge planes on the airstrip before. This day, I went onto the tarmac and was looking around for my plane and said to the attendants, "Where's the plane?" Someone replied, "It's over there." I looked around and saw this squat little plane. It looked like only about 6 people could fit inside. I was horrified that I was going to have to fly over the depths of the jungle in this tiny aircraft. Then, to make things worse, when I got into the plane, they tied all the luggage on one side with these huge nets, and a few passengers were simply hanging on to the other side. The pilot was in the front with just a curtain to pull across, which he didn't even pull across. Anyway, we take off in this flat-nosed little plane and slowly went above the clouds. As we were going above the clouds, you could see the jagged mountain tips peeking out through the clouds. I thought, Christ, I was terrified that we're going to run into one of these mountains we kept flying over. On the way, we had to land at Cape Rodney. Yes, coincidentally, this is a story about Rodney, flying to Cape Rodney. It's a real place, I looked it up. The pilot points and says, "I think Cape Rodney's down there." So we'll just go down and have a look. Next thing he says, "Nope, it's not that way." So we turn around and follow the coastline until we eventually find Cape Rodney. We let some of the people and cargo off at Cape Rodney and continued our terrifying journey over Papua New Guinea. I'll never forget that frightening plane trip I had to endure to be with my love.
Good afternoon, everyone. I have to apologise for my voice. My name's Patrick. I am Rodney's nephew on Helen's side of the family. My mum, Kathy, was Helen's sister. Rod was also my godfather, and I just want to say a few short words about my memories of him, I guess, growing up, and I'm sure all the nieces and nephews here would have sort of similar stories, I guess, probably more interesting ones, but just to give you an idea of what Rodney meant to me, and probably to, I'm sure, to all the nieces and nephews. So I actually asked Jude to send me a copy of this photo, which is here on the back, because it's such a favourite photo of mine of Rodney and Helen, and it, I don't know, it just sort of sums up their relationship. I think they look so wonderful together. So my earliest memories of Rod, I think he probably had a moustache that would have been the envy of any Australian cricketer at the time. I think that's right, and I think it's no accident that Rodney became a primary school teacher. He certainly had an enthusiasm and a love for kids that was infectious, and I think that's what drew us all to him as kids. And he certainly had a love of sport, as it's been well recounted. So I think the two of those things were great growing up. I remember learning how to bowl a cricket ball with Rod on the beach up in Darwin where we lived, and many happy Christmases kicking the footy outside of Brett Street here in Bairnsdale over the summer holidays. I was lucky enough to go and visit pardon me, Helen and Rod when they lived in Jakarta, and I was there with Ian, who's here today, and his son Nick, who unfortunately couldn't make it. But we were both only young at the time, and we really loved that trip, staying with them there. They were so generous to us, and we had such a great time. There's one story in particular. I remember Nick was he was a bit younger than me at the time, and every morning there was this sort of ritual where we'd have these pancakes made by the woman who worked in the kitchen there. And I think we were going somewhere, and Rod came out and said, "Oh look, we haven't got time. There's no pancakes today." And anyway, so Nick started crying. His tears were rolling down his face, and so Rod relented, and of course this massive stack of pancakes arrived, and I was secretly sitting there going, "Good work, Nick. You've done well," because the pancakes were fantastic. And yeah, no, Rod it was just great fun to be with, and he, as you said, he was larger than life, and he certainly loomed large in my childhood. I remember going to visit them in Adelaide when we were living in the NT, and Rod took me to see Return of the Jedi. And I vividly remember coming back on the bus and having this lightsaber fight with Rod on the bus. And for someone who hadn't used one before, he was pretty good with it. But yeah, it's just one of those nice little memories that you have for someone. So I guess it's nice to be able to remember Rod like that, and I think probably just one more memory, and that's him, I think, probably elbowing a couple of cousins out of the way to take a big specky out the front of Brett Street yelling out Jezelenko. And that's how I'll remember Rod. So, yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Folks, excuse me just for a moment. This is most unusual, but a concrete truck going past has had part of the back of it break, and it splashed some of the cars out there, and there are workmen there cleaning up. And the folks that are driving the silver Lexus and the little white Hyundai i30 that are parked at the front, if you're able to go and shift your cars before stuff starts setting, they've already hosed the cars off. Given everything else that's happened today with the grave with Rod and that, I feel like something strange happening here. So I see one gentleman going out. I don't know who the silver Lexus at the front is, but okay, and we'll just pause for a moment until those folk come back. Thank you.
Exactly.
Okay, I think the cars are in order or not in order. Somebody, I heard a comment saying only a Seebeck happened yet, or you didn't have anything against Alexis cars or anything like that? Do you have a preference for cars that Rodney might have smothered in concrete? No? Okay, we do have a couple more people that are going to come up, and I believe is it Brian that is next?
Good afternoon. I'm Brian Kenworthy, and my stories relate to Rod in a much earlier period when we had both just left Teachers College. And I first met Rod when he was teaching at Wonthaggi Tech in his first appointment. And I was teaching at a little place called Lance Creek. And Lance Creek is a one teacher school, about 15 children, about 20 minutes out of Wonthaggi. And Rod and I met through both of us becoming members of the Cape Patterson Surf Lifesaving Club. And from surfing together and having a few drinks together, Rod came back to our house in Wonthaggi, and where my family was. And after being away for a couple of years teaching, I moved back into our family home, and Rob became a constant visitor to our family home. And my mother and my grandmother, who lived about 2 to 3 doors down, thought Rod was wonderful. He was so polite, unlike myself. He was such a handsome, tall lad. And I'm hardly handsome or hardly tall. But they loved Rod and they thought he was wonderful. So Rod and I had quite a lot of adventures together. And I'm going to, in a moment, I'll tell you one of those adventures. A lot of them are probably, I can't possibly tell, but anyway, as well as Rod visiting our house, at some weekends we would drive down to Wonder Corso Parkdale, and the Seebeck's house, there was this lovely apartment out the back with four bunk beds and a bathroom, and it was quite private, quite a long away from the house. And I would go down there and stay, and Trevor at that stage was in Myrtleford, so there was always a spare bed. But there'd be Jeffrey in there, and Rod and myself, and we got up to a bit of mischief. And Jeffrey had just started working at George Patterson Advertising Agency. And every year there's a wonderful event called the Advertising Artists Ball. And the Advertising Artists Ball was held in the St Kilda Palais. And Jeffrey was going off to this ball, and he said, I want you and Rodney to come. I said, we haven't got tickets. He said, don't worry. He said, I know there's a side door to the Palais, and if you come at a pre-arranged time and just knock on the door, I'll let you in the side door. And we said, well, what should we wear? And he says, you're going as cavemen. And he then produced these costumes. And they were proper sort of caveman costumes. And so we put these costumes on. And he also produced 2 ham bones. And the ham bones were about this long. And we sort of had to wave them around a bit. Anyway, I arrived at the Palais and got to the door at the pre-arranged time, knocked on the door, and Jeffrey opened the door. And it was one of those balls where people are sitting around in tables. We said, where do we sit, Jeffrey? He said, oh, it's all arranged, he said. I've got a number of tables, and when they're up dancing, you can sit where they've been sitting, and you can sort of help yourself to the booze on the tables. And I said, well, we can't do that. He said, no, that's all fixed, it's all done. Jeffrey was a real fixer, he was really good at that. And so we had a great night. We had a wonderful night. And at midnight, the thing was all over. And I might have been a little worse for wear, I think. Because we walked out of the front of the Palais, and I noticed there were a lot of police cars lined up. And I walked out and very happy and had such a wonderful time, like waving my ham bone around. And a large policeman came up and grabbed me and said, you're coming with me, son. And he marched me towards a paddy wagon. And Rod said, you can't do that. That's my mate. You can't do that. He said, I'm driving him home. Well, you're not driving home, son. He said, I've hardly had anything to drink. I can drive him home. No. Where are your keys? So he grabbed the keys off Rod and he said, you can pick your mate and your keys up in the St Kilda Watch House at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. So off I went to the watch house, and they had all these people in a large room with benches around the edges. So it wasn't like a jail where you were locked up. But there were some strange people in there, I can tell you. And I said, there's no way I'm going to go to sleep here. So I managed to stay awake all night. But there were some very, very strange people indeed. There were a few people from the Palais as well. but there were a lot of odd people. Anyway, about 6 o'clock in the morning, policeman came up and said, you can go home, son. And I must say before that, when I first got admitted, they asked me for my address. And I said, well, I'm not going to give my home address. So I said, it's 1 of the Corsade Park. And what do you do? I said, I'm not going to tell them I'm a teacher. I said, I'm a university student. He said, where are you studying? I said, sociology. Yeah. But anyway, so they let me go at 6 o'clock in the morning. And luckily I had some money and I thought, well, I'm not going to sit here wait for Rod and Jeffrey to come. Oh, now Rod and Jeffrey had to go and sleep on the beach at St Kilda. So they were sleeping on the beach at St Kilda. I got into a cab and went home. I went home to one which also parked there, of course. Found the back door of the sleep out open. I went in and went to bed. And they were not too happy when they got home. But that's one story of many. And it was a period when Rod and I were sort of discovering, we were still quite young, we were in our early 20s, late teens, early 20s. And we got up to a lot of activities. And there's a gentleman here called Jim Mornane. Jim Mornane and Rod lived together here in Bairnsdale when Rod was talking in Bairnsdale. And Jim introduced us to the Bilgola Surf Club in northern Sydney, one of the beautiful northern Sydney beaches. And later on today, I can tell some stories about the Bilgola Surf Club that will curl your hair. So I'm really sorry that I live in Adelaide, and I would bring Rod maybe every couple of weeks, but I was just so sorry that it was too far away to come here and support Rod, when I knew that he would be very much like to see me and my wife, and provide some degree of support, which a lot of people here in Bairnsdale were doing in any case. But I really regret that for that period of my life we were so far away. But thank you very much.
Someone told me it was fun.
Now we've got one more gentleman who wants to come up and say something, is that right? Yep.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alan Gaskell. I grew up with the Seebecks. Not long before Jeff went to Hong Kong, we'd got the chop from Richmond, and the powers that be there suggested that we go down to Carrum and play with Eric Guy. Now, Eric, as those who are old enough to remember, was as hard as nuts, and there was no stepping backwards. Jeff dropped out because he was on the eve of going away to Hong Kong, but I continued to play there, and it happened to be at the same time that Rodney went to Chelsea. And they had an equally combative and competitive coach called Kevin Doc White. And I've only ever been scared on the football field once, and that was when Kevin Doc White came up against Eric Guy with his eyes spinning, and they charged at each other like rampant bulls. It was frightening. Anyhow, this day, Rod's in the ruck and I'm in the ruck, and it's a hard-fought Chelsea-Carrum game, and we went for a throw-in, and I think I hit Rod in the head. I got a dressing down from my older brother. "You were my friend Gaskell, but you're not anymore." That's stuck with me for 60 years or 50 years, however long it is, but very fond memories of my older brother.
Just imagine how many more memories are going to be shared this afternoon. They say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, but I think that photos are 1,000 or more memories that are captured in a moment of time through the camera. The photos show special times, people and places that have meant something to those in the photos and to those that are taking the photos. You can see so much of a person's life that is hard to describe in words. And from the life that Rodney and Helen have lived, there should be many photos from around the world. You're now going to see photos that were just chosen especially for today as a tribute to Rod's life.
and blue for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Yeah.
The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying how do you do. They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They learn much more than I ever knew. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Now, wasn't that a walk down memory lane? Oh, I love listening to the commentary of you all saying which each photo was and who it was. Now, would you all please stand and join me in saying the Lord's Prayer? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Please be seated. Today you've been remembering with love a man who was special to each of you. In the days and the weeks and years to come, continue to talk about Rodney, and that will help to keep his story alive and let his memory live on, and he has got a great life story. Remember him for the loving husband, brother, uncle, relative and friend that he was. Think of how independent he was, and I can vouch for that because I have another job and I'm a nurse in the rehabilitation centre of the hospital, and I have actually looked after Rodney in the past, and he was a very independent man. Oh, that's all I'll say on that. Remember the love that he had for his family and his friends. Remember how he loved to travel all around the world, and whether it was where work took him or when he travelled for pleasure. Rod and Helen had some original grey nomads that travelled around Australia, and you've seen some photos of the little caravan there. Rod was an avid sportsman, both as a player and later on as a spectator, and he'll be fondly remembered by the Bairnsdale Redlegs Association. Whenever you hear a piece of jazz music being played by the likes of Duke Ellington, think of Rod and his love of music. He also enjoyed going to concerts and to the cinema too. He was a man who enjoyed the challenge of computer technology, although there were times when he did need a bit of help. He did enjoy a glass of red wine, so the next time you have one, raise your glass and give Rod a cheer. Helen and Rod both travelled extensively and lived in different countries, and one of Rod's pieces of advice was to always be tolerant of other people's cultures. So that is something that you can take with you today and make sure that Rod will be proud. Rodney was a man who lived his life devoted to Helen, and after she passed away, a piece of his heart went with her. They were each other's lives, and now nothing can separate them again. You may have seen the poem, the title, The Dash, which is on your booklet. I'm not going to read it out, it's quite long, but it's a fitting tribute to how Rodney led his life and all things that he accomplished within his dash, and is something that he should be very proud of. However you remember Rodney, always remember him with love. I'm now going to ask Kim to please come up and share some closing words.
With the passing of Rod and Helen, a limb has fallen from the family tree. We will continue the traditions and are thankful for being able to share your life, Rod, which was one of strength, interest, courage, integrity, and fun. Rest in peace, dear brother, uncle, neighbour and friend. Your place no one will fill. Well done. It's time to bore the billy and pack up your campsite.
Everything turns, there is a season turns. Mark.